Hello, happy December, and welcome to SCARE. I'm Taylor. I'm the Youth Programs Coordinator here at SCARE, and I work directly with our youth tutoring as well for grades K through 12. But welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the second round of our Momentum Career Training Series. So if you've been with us before, you know that throughout 2022, for a few months, we've released a Momentum Career Training Series, and that was like our first round of it. So if you haven't already, I would highly recommend just going back and reviewing those if you haven't watched them. And today, we're going to be kicking off this next round of Momentum with keeping it professional. So this is going to be another 4-part series. So today is just part 1 in this year's Momentum. So to get started, I did want to review the meaning of momentum and why we chose this as our theme for this series. So momentum is movement. Momentum is energy. Movement and energy meet, they become your vision. As you visualize your future, your visions become your first steps. First steps become goals that you create, you can realistically achieve because you set your pace. You are the momentum for your focus, your passion, your goals for your family. As you create your momentum, you naturally begin to take steps needed to visualize your goals as actions and positive energy for your future. Be kind to yourself. So when we're talking about momentum, the important thing is kind of finding our own pace. So if you're thinking about someone who's running a marathon, it's not realistic to sprint the whole time. Right? It's not about being the fastest, but finding your momentum means finding the pace that works for you and the pace that lets you finish the marathon and gets you to the finish line. So in our daily life, that just means finding what works for us and a pace that works for each and every one of us. And also momentum takes time. Usually it starts off with something slow and maybe some of the easier steps and goals. And it's kind of like riding a bike uphill, right? If you were to stand at the very bottom of a mountain and try to immediately ride a bike uphill, it's not going to work. It's going to be really hard. But if you were to, let's say, kind of go back a few feet, right? Go back a little bit, start pedaling, you're gaining speed, you're gaining that momentum, and it becomes a lot easier to go up the hill. And so it's kind of the same thing when we're talking about our goals. We have to kind of back up, start slow, and then once we get there, we build up that momentum, and we're able to go through these uphill things, and it becomes a lot easier. So before we even get started in today's momentum, I did want to also review some of the topics that we touched on in our first round of momentum. And so again, if you haven't watched them already, highly recommend it, but I am going to review some of the key points here. So in our Momentum 1.0, our first training, we talked about visualizing your future. So some of the topics that we touched on for that included things like finding support. So whether it's through organizations like SCARE, TANF, or through family and friends, just building a support system to help you reach your goals, kind of help you throughout all of the obstacles you deal with along the way. Also talked about finding your motivation. So even finding the reasons why you want to achieve and set these goals in the first place. So it might be just improving things for you and your family, right? Just finding what gives us our drive. Also talked about things like goal setting. So rather than having one super large goal, kind of breaking it up into more manageable pieces. That's going to sound really intimidating if you have one huge goal, right? So get a job, right? But if we were to break that up a little bit, it could be something simple as, well, the first goal is updating a resume. It's a lot more manageable to kind of work towards these little steps to eventually reach the end goal of a job. In that workshop, we also talked about returning to the workforce and also just taking the first step to reach your goals. Using the support system around you and kind of like finding those first achievable steps to work towards the right direction. So next, in our second part of momentum, we did talk about career exploration. So in that training, we talked about things like narrowing down career pathways. So finding maybe some different types of jobs and careers that work for different personalities. Finding out whether you want to work with, let's say, customers, or whether you want to work in an office or outside. Just finding these details that kind of narrow down which direction to go. Also included finding your soft skills, right? So finding kind of your own strengths that you can bring to the table when you're job searching and coming to a job. In that workshop, we also talked about digital footprints and the importance of what you have on the internet, as well as things like financial aid for students. Then we also touched on the topic of networking, so using and building relationships with people around you in order to know what opportunities are really out there and kind of have that support community in the process. Next up, for our third part of our kind of most recent series, we touched on healthy communication. So that involved things like conflict resolution, finding healthy ways to deal with maybe some not so fun topics in times of trouble. It talked about things like active listening when you're engaging in conversations with people, I statements, and learning different ways to phrase your own feelings and what you're going through. Also dealt with topics such as cultivating a healthy relationship with anger and avoiding anything like lashing out. But anger is a tool for us to kind of know what's going on, and there's a different way to use it. We also talked about communication in the workplace and kind of broke down the different types of communication. So there's verbal. So if you're talking, physically words with someone, that's our verbal communication. But there's also the nonverbal, so our body language, the way that can come across also when we communicate with people, as well as visual and written communication, right? So if we are sending out emails, sending out messages, that way, the way we communicate might be a little bit different. And then lastly, from our previous Momentum training series, we had Meet the Employers. So you guys got to hear from a variety of different employers and kind of find out what stood out to them about people that they hire, people that applied for the jobs, right? So you guys got to hear them answer the question, what was it about the last person hired that convinced you to offer them the job? So that's just kind of like a brief overview of some of the topics that were touched on in the last few Momentum training series. So in this round of Momentum, here is what you can look forward to. So right now we're in December of 2022, so we're dealing with keeping it professional. Our next one is going to be released in March next year, and we're going to be talking about personal dynamics. And then after that, our third part is going to be released in June, and we're going to ask you, are you ready for your dream job? And then lastly, our fourth part of this series will be released in September, and instead of Meet the Employers, this time it's going to be Meet the Employees. So you guys will get to hear from employees, see what actually keeps them in the workplace and what makes their own workplace healthy and keeps them and just keeps them around. So today's topic, when we're talking about keeping it professional, here's some things you can look forward to from my wonderful colleagues. It's going to go over things like office work speak, so inter-office communication, kind of like all the skills behind that. We're also going to touch on information breach, so social media accounts and how important it is to keep track of the information that you have out there. We're also going to be talking about staying connected and keep learning. So even if you reach your goal and have this job, just knowing that you're going to keep improving and learning new things along the way and keep growing. We're never going to stop growing. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about time management to ease stress. So those are just some things to look forward to for today. But I do want to remind you to please take the surveys for this career training series. We really appreciate your feedback. And then just please let us know what you'd like to see in our future trainings. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, put it in our surveys, and we will definitely try to incorporate that the best we can into any of our future trainings. Other than that, I hope you all enjoyed today's Momentum Career Training Series. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Heidi Beckenbach McGann. I'm the SCARE Counseling Director, and I'm going to share with you the topic of keeping it professional, office work speak, and inter-office communications. And this refers mainly to coworker and supervisor in-office communications and interactions. It's important to maintain clear communication at work with coworkers and with supervisors. And we just want to make sure that we have a professional presence at work. We always want to be communicative and clear in the ways that we present information and that we talk to our coworkers. And sometimes this is not always an easy thing to do. There's lots of different parameters and different things that affect our ability to do that. So today we're just going to go over some tips and strategies in this specific area that can be helpful. So this is just an overview of some of the things that we'll be discussing today. One of them is talking about active listening skills. Another is knowing where to communicate, and also about what specifically, the importance of being mindful of how you are communicating information, and then also tips for being a clear communicator. So in one of the previous momentum trainings, I had also talked about some healthy communication strategies, and I'd gone over active listening, and I really felt the need to bring it up again because active listening is such an important and integral part in the way that we communicate. Oftentimes we think about communication as just the speaker, but in reality, so much goes into listening. And when we are active listening and when we are really present and engaged in the conversations, we're able to really take in the information of the other speaker and able to collaborate more seamlessly. So we're going to go over the active listening skills that can be helpful in the communication practice. First off, being attentive. And being attentive means really taking the time and space to be engaged in what's happening in the moment. If we're really distracted or if we're not present, it really causes, it's very likely that we'll be having a tough time communicating because we're really not going to be hearing what's being said by others. And then also at the same time, we're probably not going to be received in the way that we want to be received. So really taking that time and space, especially around really important conversations, to not be distracted, putting our phones away, putting down our laptops, making sure that it's just you and the other person when we're having these important conversations. Also, too, asking open-ended questions. So how are we able to gain more insight and more information from what we're talking about, and making sure that we're asking these questions to whoever we're talking to, whether or not they're open-ended questions, which is the second one, or asking probing questions, following up with things. And then also, just like with the questioning, number 4 is requesting clarification. If we're unsure of something, it's really helpful to get some clarification on what somebody's saying or what their intention is behind what they're saying, so that we're not just making assumptions or we're not jumping to conclusions that could be false. It's just helpful to just get it handled right away and ask for clarification on the matter so that you're able to move forward more seamlessly. Number 5 is paraphrasing. So kind of repeating back what the person that you're talking to is saying so that they know that you're listening, and also that you're really receiving what they're saying. Number 6, being attuned to and reflecting feelings. So if people are talking to you about things at work and it's bringing up stuff, it's important for you to reflect and see where they're coming from. And then that way, yet again, it can make sure that the other person knows that you've received and are really hearing them. And then lastly, number 7 is to summarize. So it's very helpful to have that full circle when you're talking about things, summarizing at the end and making sure that all of the points have been heard and understood in a way that you can move forward on your projects or move forward in whatever it is that you plan on working on together at work. Next, we'll be discussing just kind of knowing where to communicate and about what. So when we're talking about the where, there's different places, right? We can have face-to-face conversations. We now have technology, so we're doing Zoom. We're also doing emails, texts, other different ways of communicating within the office or within the workplace. But when it comes down to bigger things that need discussions, it's really important to prioritize face-to-face conversations. So much is said with our nonverbals. Also, really, you can create a dialogue. You can get way more information. So if it's something big, prioritizing that like face-to-face communication, also making sure whatever space you're in is appropriate for these types of conversations. If it's a one-on-one, are you going into an office and making sure that there aren't any distractions or other people walking by, really thinking about where you're having these types of conversations. Also, if we are planning on giving people feedback, it's helpful to give people feedback in private. You know, nobody wants to be in a meeting and have somebody criticizing them. So it's important to praise in public, you know, and letting people know if you find what they're doing helpful, supportive, really giving them praise and accolades when they're doing well and you appreciate them. You can do that in public, but if we're ever trying to give any sort of critiques, trying to do that more in private. Then also too, just thinking about, we've talked about, you know, prioritizing face-to-face conversations, but sometimes texts and emails are really, really of benefit when we're trying to, you know, figure out small details and we just need a quick response. So just knowing that that's the time when you want to utilize email and texting, or, you know, after you have a meeting and you want to send an email that summarizes all of the things that you all have talked about so that you can really clarify, yet again, talking about those active listening skills and summarizing again and making really sure that you're on the same page and then putting that in email format. When we're talking about what we want to be talking to people about, you know, when we have coworkers, we're sharing space with them a lot. And a lot of times we're with our coworkers more so than we can be with our families. So a lot of the times we do develop really close and tight-knit relationships, but it's important to be aware of what you share and then also with who and where it is, right? You don't want to overshare at work. You really want to be mindful of only releasing whatever information you really want other people to know and what's appropriate for the workplace setting. So you don't want to overshare in these environments at all. Also, just being mindful that like gossiping can be really dangerous and harmful in these situations and often has a tendency to come back and get people in trouble. So just really having some professional boundaries around these types of topics of conversation so that you can steer clear of any issues in regards to that. If you are having or struggling with a coworker, it's better to have those face-to-face conversations about it and to bringing it to their attention in a helpful and more productive way than going behind people's backs and gossiping about what's going on. Or if you need more help in that arena, you know, pulling in a supervisor and having them help you navigate these more difficult conversations with some of your coworkers is a more helpful and constructive way of managing those sorts of things. And then when we're talking about how we're communicating, it's about being mindful of that. You know, how are we presenting in certain ways? You know, there's so much more in our levels of communication than just our words. So especially if we're having these face-to-face conversations, being mindful of our body language. Are we open in what we're doing? Are we attentive? Are we looking away? Are we distracted? You know, when you are having conversations with people and you're trying to share something that you feel is important, you want someone looking at you. You want someone engaged. And our body language really presents in ways that will give off and let other people know whether or not we're really interested in what's going on. So when you are in these work settings, just, taking a look around, seeing if your arms are open, making sure that they're not crossed, trying to have more of that openness in the way of your body language. And then also to being mindful of your tone. So we're at work, oftentimes we're going to get frustrated, but it's not helpful for, raising voices or for talking to people in negative tones. That's not going to be received well. So I like this expression, raise your words, not your voice. So how can you communicate things without, using a negative tone, and ways of doing it in a more useful way that can create a better flow of communication. And then when we're discussing like clear communication, some different strategies for that are, we talked about the face-to-face, how that can be helpful, but also really prioritizing two-way communication. If you've ever been in a conversation with somebody who's really taking it over, you're not finding that you're listened to. So we want to make sure that there's a really nice back and forth that also oftentimes really highlights collaboration between coworkers. So really making sure that if your coworker's not saying anything, asking them if they have anything that they would like to add, what their thoughts are on things. So it's a lot more of a back and forth. Also, in regards to clear communication, sticking to facts and not stories. We want to make sure that we're concise in what we're saying, and sometimes we can get lost in the story or the emotion of things, but that oftentimes is not helpful in the workplace. So how are we sticking to facts and details that are really a part of what the conversation is about? And then similarly, when we're talking about in the active listening with the paraphrasing and summarizing, we want to repeat the important messages. We want to make sure that really the main details got heard and explored, and that we're following up on the main things that need to be followed up on. And then again, in regards to summarizing, how it's also helpful to have a written summary afterwards, just that kind of details all of the things that have been discussed. So I like this little board here. Better communication is clear, concise, and just being, thinking about how you can really work with your coworkers in a way. And when you're noticing that the communication's off, thinking to yourself, okay, how can I make this clearer? How can I make this more concise? How can I make this more complete? And oftentimes when we do that, we're then making it a lot easier to work through and problem solve together. So yeah, those are some of the main strategies, tools, techniques that can be helpful around clear communication in regards to the workplace with both supervisors and also coworkers.
Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Andina Astenieto, and I'm one of the counselors at SCARE. I've been here for 9 years, and I've really loved working in the SCARE community. I've worked with kids, teens, adults, couples, families, and I really love this work. I love supporting people in any way that I can. And so thank you for being part of the SCARE community. So today, we wanted to talk about healthy communication, since that is so relevant and so important in so many areas of our life, including work and home, family, couples, partners, kids, parenting. It is so helpful. And one of the really challenging parts about communication, as we all know, is conflict. So we're going to be talking a little bit about what I mean by the word conflict, because sometimes we have different ideas of what that means. And then I wanted to share some techniques that are helpful for having conversations to try to come to a mutual understanding and move forward with the person that you're in the conflict with. Because, you know, a lot of times we don't really know how to do that. And then we end up getting fired up, mad, yelling. I mean, some people throw stuff. I mean, sometimes really big things happen when we're in conflict and we're mad, upset, worried, hurt, whatever. And it can actually, you know, the conflict can be the first problem, but then how we behave in the conflict can end up creating more problems and not moving us towards any sort of understanding or solution. So I think these techniques are so helpful and so important. And I hope you can keep them in mind for not only the workplace with your boss, your supervisor, your coworkers, but also at home with your loved ones, your parents, your kids, whoever it is, your partner. So yeah, just thank you for being here, and I'm going to jump in. So this is called Techniques for Navigating Conflict, and I put these little cartoons here because I just, humor is always helpful, I think, with anything. Make it a little more entertaining and engaging. So I picked some funny I thought they were kind of funny cartoons to put on here. So here we have these. If you've seen how back in the day during the medieval days, and they have that medieval times, right? Up near LA, is it? But I don't know if you've ever been. I went when I was a kid and it was fun. But anyways, back in the medieval times, they would have a sport basically where two knights would joust with these really long things, pointy things. I forget what they're called. But anyway, in the first cartoon, there's two knights and they're coming straight at each other with the pointy things, because that was one way to settle conflict back then. And it was also like a sport where people would come, they'd have like spectators there and everything. But anyway, on the cartoon, it says, one of them's thinking, we need a better process for resolving conflict. And then the second cartoon here says, it has like a lady, almost like she's a supervisor or something. And then there's like two coworkers, a dog and a cat, and they're at work with the desk. And then she says, this is the third time in the last week I've had you two in HR. So she's human resources, and they're like constantly fighting, And then the third one has these two guys. And then at the bottom it says, the one guy says, we can resolve this conflict right now. Just admit it was all your fault. And hey, a lot of us act like that in conflict. So sometimes we want to blame the other person, act like they're the complete problem. And you know what? I do want to share something that I think is helpful. When we get in conflict with people, we argue, we disagree. A lot of times the way we think is that the other person's the problem. We want to blame them. If they would just change the way that they're doing things, then everything would be better. And for a lot of us, it's hard for us to look at our part in the issue, in the conflict, and take accountability. And so, a helpful way to think about it is when you're in a conflict, even if it's with your partner and it's the same old argument that you get in all the time, or if it's with your kids or whoever, it's not that one person is the problem necessarily, or the other person is the problem. It's the cycle of conflict that's the problem. It's the dynamic between the two people. And now, I'm not talking about abuse, okay? Abuse is a different thing. That's a different thing. If someone's being abusive, that is the problem. Their behavior is the problem. That's not what I'm talking about. If you don't have abuse in the dynamic, it's just two people that, are fighting about something. It's the dynamic that's the problem. And that's a helpful way to think about it, because a lot of the times when we're blaming the other person, or sometimes we do the opposite and we just want to blame ourselves, like, oh no, I did it again. I made the person mad. It's all my fault. A lot of times when we blame the other person or we blame ourselves, it's really not helpful towards moving to a better place in the conflict. And so, yeah, just thinking about the dynamic or the conflict cycle as the problem outside of the two people is a lot of times a helpful framework. So, all right, so let's move on. All right, so here's our definition of conflict. And, you'll look up the word conflict, you'll find different definitions. I thought these were pretty helpful, the ones that I found here. So a clashing or disagreement, as in between ideas, interests, or purposes. And then another example is a mental struggle resulting from needs, drives, wishes, or demands that are not compatible. So I thought those were two pretty helpful definitions. The word conflict actually is a big umbrella for a lot of different things. I mean, a lot of times people will call literal wars conflict, so that's obviously a really huge conflict, a really huge example with a lot of consequences. Whereas we can also call a little bickering with our loved one before we leave for work in the morning a conflict too. So it's an umbrella word for a lot of different types of disagreements and clashes. So here this cartoon says, it has like a bunch of people with their business suits on at work. And then at the bottom it says, "Aren't you glad we have this meeting to resolve our conflict?" And I just thought it was funny because they're having a big food fight. And actually it looks fun to me. I've been part of a food fight, the biggest food fight in the world, in fact. It was out in Spain, and it was fun. So anyway, I just thought this picture was fun and funny. All right, so I listened to this podcast that has these techniques, and it's always good to give credit to the people whose ideas you're sharing, right? Of course. So I'm not trying to come off like, oh, this is my idea, because that's harmful when we do that, when we educate others and act like something is our idea, but it's not. So so conversational receptiveness is from a podcast I heard. I love this podcast called Hidden Brain. And if you're interested in psychology, you probably will like it too. They have a lot of really fascinating topics on there. And then the guest was a woman named Julia Minson from Harvard University. That's who they interviewed. And she came up with these techniques because she studies conflict and she studies communication during conflict. So like I said, she calls it conversational receptiveness. And here's a little nutshell of what that means. So conversational techniques that demonstrate to people that you are willing to engage with their point of view. And I also wrote on the bottom, it's very useful, these techniques, when experiencing conflict. So it's cool because, the acronyms, like when you can remember the letters in a word, and those help you remember the different points of a concept. So the acronym for this is HEAR. So that's convenient, HEAR, very relevant. And so the different points, the different techniques are called hedging, emphasizing agreement, acknowledgement, and reframing to the positive. And I'm going to explain what these are. So hedging, that means during the conflict, you say words like perhaps, sometimes, maybe. And one reason for that is because it acknowledges that there are gray areas, right? And when I have one perspective and then my counterpart that I'm in a conflict with has a different perspective, there's a gray area sometimes between. So it's not just black and white, like I'm right and that person's wrong, or they're right and I'm wrong. Usually when it's human conflict, there's a gray area because there's different ways to look at it. So perhaps, sometimes, maybe it acknowledges the gray area. And that's usually helpful for the other person, instead of me just acting like I'm right and you're wrong and that's it. It's black and white, right? So I made up an example, y'all, about a workplace example of a conflict that I thought could be helpful for us to understand these concepts. So because the holidays are coming up, and I know that a significant amount of the Scare community does celebrate Christmas, I picked an example where let's pretend like you're the employee and you are asking your supervisor if you can have Christmas Day off because you work at a store and they're open on Christmas Day. And I know at workplaces, one of the big topics that can create conflict is scheduling, right? Oh gosh, I can think back to conflicts I had with supervisors about scheduling, and sometimes they were not fun. And especially when you're the employee and they're the supervisor, because there's a power dynamic there. So they have more power than you do in this situation. So that can make it a lot harder to experience this type of conflict when you're the employee. And scheduling, I mean, that has to do with your quality of life. It's like sometimes you need days off to either go to a doctor appointment, or it's your kid's recital and you really wanted to go to that, or whatever. So scheduling can be really sensitive and really important source of conflict. And I hope for all of you that you get along well with your supervisors in that way, but unfortunately, a lot of times we don't. So here's the example. You're working at a store, you're asking for Christmas Day off, your supervisor's acting like they don't want to give it to you off. So here's you talking to your supervisor. Here's some examples, okay? So instead of saying something very black and white and rigid, like, I should get Christmas off. I know that it's fine. I don't know why you're giving me a hard time about this. You're wrong. Like, it's fine if I take Christmas off. You know, something like that, where you're acting like you don't even want to hear what they have to say. You're right, and it's black and white. A lot of times that's not helpful, especially with a supervisor. In fact, I can imagine a lot of supervisors might write somebody up for that type of thing. You know, the person was being argumentative and not using healthy communication or whatever. So here's my example. If you're in that situation, instead of that black and white example, you could say something like, well, maybe we can ask an employee that doesn't celebrate Christmas if they can pick up my shift. Because, you know, there's people that are Muslim, Jewish, different religions. Maybe they're not religious and they don't celebrate Christmas. There's people with different beliefs and cultures. So that's sometimes a good idea, because sometimes a Jewish person doesn't mind because they don't get together with their family on Christmas, or, you know, people that are not Christian or they don't celebrate. So that's one example of something you could say. Whereas a black and white way of saying that same thing is like, are you kidding? We could just ask somebody that doesn't celebrate Christmas. Like, why didn't, you know, that's obviously the answer. Why didn't you think of that? You know, like, if we say something like that, that's usually interpreted as disrespectful. But if you say, like, maybe we can ask an employee, it's kind of presenting the idea without being really pushy and sometimes, you know, like I said, disrespectful or aggressive about it. And then another example here is, like, another thing you could say is, well, sometimes we only need 2 people, and it's probably going to be slow that day because people will be with their families. So you could present the idea that, you know, it's probably going to be slow and probably don't need a lot of people. You know, so that's kind of, again, a suggestion versus a pushy, rigid, aggressive way of communicating. All right, let's move on. So emphasizing agreement is the next one. And I'm not really explaining what that is because it's kind of obvious. It's like, well, it's kind of not actually. So let me say it. Do your best to find the things that you agree on, all right, that are relevant to the conflict with the person. So here are my examples in, you know, when you're talking to your supervisor. So your supervisor is saying, oh, we can't just all be taking time off around the holidays because we won't have enough people or something. Then you say, yeah, I agree that we all need to be careful about taking time off around the holidays. And you can say, like, I also care that the store runs well. I agree about that, you know? You can also say something like, well, and I made up these employee names, by the way. They're my name of my abuela, my grandmother, and a really good friend of mine. So I picked people that I love to use as examples. So you can say something like, we both think that if Josefina and William agree to work that day, then they can each run the store by themselves while the other person is on their lunch break. So again, like, let's say you and your supervisor are trying to talk about the possibilities if you take that day off. and then you realize you both agree that this type of thing could work, that Josefina and William could do it. All right. Next one, acknowledgement. So this one is real important, okay? And please remember this, for the sake of your healthy communication, when you're in conflict with anybody, including your partner, your kids, your family, whoever, if you acknowledge the other person's position and perspective, that goes a long way in them feeling heard. And when people feel heard and they feel that you care and you want to engage with their perspective and their way of seeing things, that really goes a long way in helping the two of you move forward towards a mutual understanding or a compromise when the person feels heard. So, for example, if you can say to the supervisor, let's say the supervisor had expressed, like, what if there's a rush and you're the one that's really good at handling rushes, and if you're not there, it might, create a lot of problems. And then you can say something like acknowledging what they're saying. So you're worried that there will be a rush and Josefina and William won't be able to handle it as well as I can. Again, if the person feels heard because you stated what they're saying in your own words, that goes a long way, okay, in being helpful. And then the next one is, like, if you're, again, acknowledging the supervisor's perspective, you can say, oh, you want to make sure we have a fair system when it comes to employees taking holidays off. Let's say the supervisor said that. Again, you're acknowledging their perspective. And then the last one is reframing to the positive. So this one is also real key in any conflict, y'all. So when we say something in a negative way, a lot of times the other person may get defensive or feel hurt or angry or whatever. So here's my example of that. Why do you keep repeating yourself without listening to what I'm saying? If I were to say that during a conflict, like, imagine if you're on the other end of a conflict with me and I say that, you're probably going to feel defensive or angry or really annoyed or something, because I'm criticizing you. And that can be interpreted as disrespectful, that way of saying it, right? Whereas if I spin it into a positive, I'm still stating what I want, yet I'm saying it in a positive way. So I'm saying, I would really appreciate it if you would listen to what I'm saying. See how they're both the same thing, but one's negative and one's positive? So if you can reframe to the positive in conflict, that goes a long way in the other person being able to receive what you're saying, and hopefully also, like, dropping their guard, not being angry, so that they can be more in a space to listen to you. So those are the examples. Okay, so that was it. And then we got to my thank you slide here. Thank you for being here. So yeah, I mean, y'all are welcome to, access this webinar whenever you want. And let's say that you're in a conflict with your supervisor or your whoever, and you're like, oh, I forgot about those techniques. You can always come back to our Scare YouTube channel and revisit this. And by the way, I've been studying mental health and healthy communication for 9 years, and I'm human. And so for most of us, when we get angry, upset, frustrated with another person, a lot of times it's hard for us to remember these kind of techniques and stay calm and be empathetic and really listen to the other person and try to come to a compromise. That's hard, even for people that have been studying this stuff for a really long time. Because part of being human is we go into like a heated state, and then our brain literally changes, our thoughts change, the way that we're approaching things changes, the way we express ourselves changes when we're in that heated state. So it can be really hard to remember these techniques and to approach things in this patient, empathetic, calm way. And it's possible to practice it. And it's possible to do this to some degree, and whatever degree you're able to do it, hopefully it will be helpful to you. And again, if you, like most things, if you keep practicing it, the better you'll get at it. And healing isn't linear. So even if you have an issue with getting angry and reactive a lot in conflicts and you really want to change that because it ends up creating a lot of problems in your relationships and in your life, hey, there's a lot of people that have that same struggle, so you're not alone in that. And if you're on a healing journey of trying to make positive changes in the way that you approach things and the way that you communicate, and you're trying to practice things like this, remember that healing isn't linear. So it's not like if you practice this, everything's just going to get easier and better and easier and better, and that's just how it's going to be. The way us humans are, we try to practice things like this, and then we have a hard week, we're frustrated, we're angry, we're irritable in general, we're stressed, and then we get into conflict with somebody. That's the kind of times when this kind of stuff ends up flying out the window and we end up going back to our old patterns a lot of the time. So just be compassionate with yourself, be patient with yourself. Remember, even the most enlightened person that studied spirituality and mental health their whole life, is if they're human, they're gonna have moments where they slip back into old patterns or they get into a heated state and they say something that's not helpful. So just be patient with yourself and compassionate with yourself. Just do the best you can. And remember that the better you take care of yourself, like getting sleep, eating well, trying to have moments to rest, trying to be in the present moment, the more you can do those kind of things, the easier it will be for you to engage in these kind of helpful techniques and remember them versus going into this kind of like reactive, irritable mode where you're just like, you're just upset with people and you get triggered easily and things like that. So take care of yourself. You can revisit this webinar. You can read about healthy communication. A lot of times that's a great way to remind yourself. You can if you'd like counseling, if you need support on this journey and you don't already have a therapist or a counselor, that could be a helpful thing too. We have counseling at Scare. There's other agencies, depending on what you're struggling with and what you need. We can refer you. Like, let's say you don't really know where to go, but you need counseling for, let's say, grief. And then you can call us up in our counseling department at Scare, and we can tell you, we can match you up with a counselor with Scare, or we can find you another place to go that specializes in grief. So, if you need support, please, let us know. We'll do our best. And thank you again for being here. I have a little map because it has thank you in a lot of different language in the shape of a world map. It's cool. So, y'all, please take care of yourselves. The holidays can be really stressful financially and with family dynamics. So try your best to take good care of yourself during the holidays. Remember, it's okay to have boundaries. Like, it's okay to not spend 2 whole days with your family if you know that that's going to take you above and beyond what you have the capacity for. Remember, it's okay to have boundaries and just, try to take care of you and your loved ones. And sending hugs out into all of you, to the Scare community. And I will see you next time for our next workshop. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, my name is Chris Gomez, and I'm here to talk to you today about social media, the pros, the cons, security, and how it could affect you getting hired or your current employment. We all know that social media has the ability for us to get our voice heard on a public platform, multiple people, if not hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions. Social media has great things that come with it and also negative things that can personally affect you and your family members. And that's what we want to talk about today. As you're all aware, there are main platforms that most people use are Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Each one of these platforms has their own pros and cons and things that we want to make sure that you take into consideration as you're using them and who you're using them to engage with. The pros are, it allows us to communicate with our friends and family. And that is a great thing in light of the fact that we have family that is spread out throughout the United States and outside of the United States. The other thing is it allows us to express ourselves in a public platform. And that is something that is a great way to extend your voice, not only from being able to talk to someone directly, but to allow your voice to be heard through, again, multiple platforms for multiple people to listen to at one time. That being said, there could be some cons associated with that. So anything that you post or any content that you share could be misconstrued by the person reading it. And at that point, we need to take into consideration if someone has access to view your profile in a public setting, what that could do for your potential professional career or your employment moving forward. Another thing, unfortunately, that comes with these, that is a con as well, is cyberbullying. And this not only affects young people that are currently in school and have friends that are on social media and sharing comments and posts or sharing videos of things that are inappropriate, it also affects all ages, all demographics. And that's something that we also want to take into consideration when using social media platforms. It is something that it could be detrimental to a person's well-being, mental health, and other components of their life. The question is, are you in the market for a new job? And if you are, here's some things that we want to take into consideration as you continue to discuss your employment or search for a new position. Obviously, some professional settings have really active social media platforms and a way for people to engage socially through those settings. And then there are positions that may not be as active, or maybe the technology is not available for those employers or employees that work at those establishments that would be able to engage on a social media platform. To be on the safe side, our focus is to look at those active organizations and active colleagues or coworkers or employers that are on social media. There are so many people that are out there that have their social media platforms set to public. And that's something that we want to talk about today as well, is recognizing private versus public, and also some other opportunities to kind of steer away from that and create more professional, forward-facing social media platform. That being said, so traditionally in a social media campaign or platform, traditionally at the age of 16 and under, all of the profiles immediately when you start your account are set to private. For those that are 16 and over, the default is all accounts are set to public. Now, what does that mean? Well, that basically means that when you post something after signing up for Facebook, say for example, once you post something on Facebook and your account has not been changed to private, me as someone who does not know you personally can actually search your name online or go to Facebook and type in your name. And if you have a unique name, it can create more of an issue as well, because it allows me to search you a lot quicker. If your name is, John Doe, and it allows me, it's a more generic name, it's harder to find. However, any given way, your name is still searched. At that point, I can actually search what content you've been posting. And if you're posting anything that could be derogatory or misconstrued again, political, or any other thing that you don't necessarily, or that could hinder your ability to be considered as for employment, this is something that we want to make sure you take a look at. So, and that if your account is set to public, then that is something that can be searched and can be visible, which again, that's something we want to discuss because it could be detrimental to your overall employment or even hiring process. One thing when you are posting on social media, if your account is set to public and you have not set it to private, you want to make sure that anything you post is not doesn't discuss politics too much. As an employer, you can sit there and look at different things, and those employers can, as they search you, also review your content. And if it has a political post, some kind of slanderous post that even though is meant as a joke, could be misconstrued again, that's something to take into consideration. One of the other key parts too is, obviously we are a very social community and a social community and city, or family, family, friends, etc. we have a tendency to gather together and have fun and, celebrate birthdays, parties, etc. We want to be mindful that as you're doing those things, that there's no content or photos of you taking in any kind of legal or illegal substance, drinking, smoking, consumption of other regulated legal or illegal drugs. And that's really a key thing here, is to keep that in mind, because again, if you're public setting, even if you're private setting, we want to make sure that someone can't share a post or have those things that can be used in other forms and share that content. The call out to that, I know that there's this constant discussion of within the state of California, there are legal substances that are allowed to be used, and you should be able to post about them or share your experience about that. Things to be mindful of, specifically with one that has just been recently recategorized and regulated, is marijuana. With marijuana, it is a legal substance within the state of California. However, some employers in the state of California do have the right to not allow you to use or have any signs of that in your system, in the hiring process, or during your employment. And there are times that an employer can drug test you if there was a work-related injury, if it is written in the employer handbook. That's something to keep in mind as well. So again, not only just worrying about those content in those posts, but some employers, again, may frown upon that if they see you using it, or may look elsewhere when you're in the hiring process to look at seeing, well, this person is posting something, more than likely are using it, even if you weren't using it yourself. So that's something you want to be very mindful of when you are posting or sharing content. My recommendation for you is, once you are hired by an employer, or if you're in the hiring process, what I would recommend is, if you are looking at employment, you can share content in various professional platforms, and we'll go over that a little bit later. But what we want to talk about here is when you are when you do get hired, my recommendation is for you to set your account to private. And one of the reasons to do this is because now that if you're using your social media platforms to actually get hired, whether it's connecting with employers or connecting with, family members that are referencing you to other potential employment, once you get hired, you want to set it to private with the intent that it locks your account down and nobody can see your account. Again, talks about private to public settings. And then we also want to be mindful and cautious of who we friend or follow while we're employed. Because again, those people could be your friends, or you could say they're your friends, or you're just like, I'm going to connect with them so I can kind of follow up with them. Well, just like you can see all their content, they can see all of yours. And if someone at one point wants to, report you to employers, and that could be detrimental to your employment. In the state of California, all employees are at will, or unless if they're specifically categorized as other. Majority of employment in the state of California is at will, which means at any given point, an employer can turn around and say, you know what, we've decided to separate employment with you, and you're no longer employed with us. Now that could be because they saw a social media post that a colleague or friend that you're working with shared with them. It could be that that your employer didn't like your attitude or your attendance issues, etc. So just that, those are things that are really key factors of it. But as it pertains to social media, again, as you lock your account down, it doesn't allow for any of your colleagues or employers to see what you're posting. So be mindful of who you're friending and following, and also set your account to private. That'll be a huge help with you during your employment. Now, in reference to how to use social media when you're looking for a job, this is something that's really great because 81% of Americans actually use social media platforms. Again, I just named a few of them earlier. There are a bunch of different ways to communicate. And it is something that is good. It could be beneficial for you. And traditionally in the professional setting, when you get into an office position or anything administrative, and even sometimes just, being a part of the standard workforce, as far as retail or anything else in the commercial industry, LinkedIn and Twitter are two of the professional platforms that are used. This is a really great way for you to engage with potential employers or colleagues you're looking for a position. And within those platforms, they also have regulations, or what you can actually go in settings, you can go in and change your account so that it is private as well. Or you can see if someone actually has, specifically in LinkedIn, has actually looked at your account. If it's a colleague or whatever, it will actually populate and tell you that someone's looked at your account. So those two are really good platforms to take a look at when you are looking at doing employment and using. Again, be very mindful of what you are posting on those platforms, whether it's public or private. You don't want to share an article from a publication that is too political. It speaks to even anything that could be, again, misconstrued. These are items that we really want to focus on because this is going to be helpful when you're getting employment. And LinkedIn is a very key factor of connecting in that professional world, and Twitter is a great way to communicate within that professional world. And so those are two things to keep in mind. Considering, the other thing you may want to do is consider creating a professional profile. And that was basically, you just create another Facebook page or another Twitter account or whatever it may be, a social media platform that has it so that it is designated more for your work, your forward-facing work life. And then you have your personal account, which is used for your family and your friends. When you do create this professional platform or profile, you want to make sure that you do it in a way that is clean and professional, forward-facing. You want to be sure that your handle or your username are maybe your name just spelled out with a number. You don't want to put the year that you were born in that thing, in that username or handle. The other thing you want to be careful of is also making sure, of course, you don't use maybe what your friends may call you, or your family nickname for you. You don't want to use that in that platform. And you also want to be sure that when creating this platform or this profile, you don't have a ton of friends and family on this account that could, again, tag you in something that you were at so-and-so's party, or you guys were doing so-and-so this weekend. And so that's something you want to be careful of when you are creating this professional profile. These are really great ways to communicate with the general public, with potential employers, and professional employers and colleagues, and even just in general, how you put yourself out in the world as far as putting yourself out on the internet is very public and can go really bad, or it could be really good. But you have to be cautious on how it's used, because at some point someone will be able to track that information. And with the internet being so readily accessible on our phones, our tablets, our computers, eventually down the road, sunglasses with cameras, with the reader in it. So there's a lot of opportunities that are coming online in technology that are going to make it that much more accessible for this information to be found. So we want to make sure that you are very cautious at whatever you're putting out there. What I want to go over now is how to protect your account. And what we'll do is, after this, I will go ahead and share these links with your other trainer, who's actually going to be posting this video, and we'll make sure you get copies of that, because this is how we get you to secure your accounts. So let me go ahead and share this here. All right, here we go. So here is, if you just type in, how do I secure my Facebook page, or how do I make my Facebook page private? This is actually in the Help Center at Facebook, and it tells you each individual step that you're going to need in order to set your account to private. Again, the default for 16 and under is it automatically goes to private. 16 and over, if you're opening an account, will be set to public. But you want to be careful, once you set it up, immediately go over and set it to private, and that will help the situation, or help you being found easily on the internet. We now have over here, again, Same thing with Instagram. If you go to the Instagram Help Center, or if you go to the internet and you type in how do I make my Instagram account private, here are the steps that you can do, whether you're doing it on your Android phone or you're doing it on your iPhone. These are different opportunities on how you can secure your account. Next we have TikTok. Now TikTok is, it has blown up substantially over the last, year, and is a really great method for one to express themselves, whether they're doing a dance, whether they're, doing a relay of someone else's video. It's a really great platform, but again, could be very detrimental to a professional work environment and also the safety of family and friends. I have had situations within my own family where I've had one of my nieces and nephews, actually one of each, post content on there that I've had to go back and actually have their parents tell them, you need to pull that down, because the person has now, because it is such a social platform, someone at a young age, old age, whoever, could get followers very quick. And could be in the 500,000 person follower, 1 million person follower. Like, this is how people become famous when using social media. It can be very detrimental as well, because it is something that people can communicate with that person. Now, fortunately with TikTok, if that person is not, let's say it's my account, if I'm not friends with you, and you try to send me a direct message, will not go through, because we are not following each other. Or even if you're following me and I'm not following you, you cannot communicate with me until I choose to follow you. There's a safeguard there. This is, again, another way for you to set your account to private versus public, and how you choose to use TikTok. And this one I wanted to kind of hone in on a little bit, because I'm going to talk about family and friends in a second. Family and people in your household in a second. Next, again, we have Twitter. Same thing. How do I set my Twitter account to private on the internet? Or you can go to the Help Center for Twitter. And LinkedIn, same thing. It gives you the opportunity to kind of build out your platform, but also set it to private and set certain things that you want seen private. So these are some key factors that you definitely want to take a look at in reference to when you're engaging any type of social media platform. And this is an article that was actually just released. It was released about social media and usage of it support your goals in your career, or getting hired, or when you're employed. And this is a good article for reading, and I'll share this with, again, the trainer that's going over this. This article with the New York Times does cover this very interesting dynamic and information on the various social media platforms and how you can engage on each one. So this is a key information item that I'd love to share with you and have you read when you have some time. So what I want to circle back to, and this is a discussion, the item that I was discussing earlier in reference to protecting the accounts is, and specifically the more active younger populations that are on Instagram and TikTok, is also having your children, or even your partner, wife, or boyfriend, girlfriend, other members in your household, is also requesting or requiring that they set their accounts to private. It's because, again, if I know your name, I can then search, maybe someone, or find a photo of you, and then if they're tagged in a photo, a family member, I can look at their profile, and if their profile is public, again, it allows me to see into your world, and what kind of content is being posted. The other thing is, if your child is posting content that's inappropriate, or could be, again, misconstrued, that's something that could be detrimental to your employment or your hiring process. So this is something that's a huge factor. And again, this goes back to also cyberbullying, with the young population being so susceptible to cyberbullying because these social media platforms are so accessible. This is something that is a really big thing that I would recommend as parents, if you are a parent, to watch your children's content and postings, because it could be it could result in cyberbullying for them, which would be detrimental to their health, well-being, and mental health. So these are just some key factors to definitely take into consideration when accessing not only yourself and your family, how they engage in those platforms. So I, at this point, want to just go ahead and say thank you for taking the time to listen to the presentation. I will be on site to answer any questions regarding any platforms specifically, or how these platforms can be beneficial and detrimental. So again, I want to encourage you all to engage social media in a delicate way, a smart way, a professional way. And I hope that you have a great day. Thank you for your time.
Hi everybody, I'm Kate Turek and I am the Education Career Counselor at the Ventura office for SCARE. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about continuous learning in the workplace. So what is continuous learning? It's intentionally expanding our skills and knowledge for personal, professional, and organizational improvement. And the most classic example of continuous learning is when an employee learns new hard skills, enabling them to gradually move up to more complex and challenging roles. So what are hard skills? That would be things like learning about Microsoft Office, taking a course for coding, things that are very technical and specific for a career. Continuous learning also includes the development of soft skills, and that's such as leadership, management, collaboration, and more. So soft skills are things that I feel a lot of people disregard when talking about continuous learning, and those are social skills. Those are meeting and greeting. Those are asking questions. Those are problem solving, helping others, teaching others, things like that. Lifelong learning is more important now than ever before. As technology develops faster and faster, companies are constantly having to adapt, and their employees' jobs are rapidly changing. So the whole goal here is to adapt, learn, and adapt some more, because jobs are changing. The duties of specific jobs are changing continuously, and you need to be able to flow with those changes. There are about 4 different types of learning, and learning doesn't have to be things that are very traditional, like being on a college campus, getting a degree, getting a certificate. Learning can come in different shapes and sizes and come from many different sources. So first, there's the formal types of learning, and those are your traditional types, okay? These are the things that take place online. They can be on a campus, and it's the form of a university, a college, a trade course, things with either recorded lectures or in-class assignments. And usually formal learning is followed by some kind of assessment or test. A good example of formal learning would be something like getting your bachelor's degree, getting an associate's degree, going through a vocational program. There's also self-directed, and that's often virtual or online. And its self-directed learning is completed at the pace and convenience of you, the student. Globally, about 58% of employees prefer to learn at their own pace, which is why a self-directed online course is a great idea. This method is also wonderful if you're trying to avoid barriers like childcare, time differences, multiple locations, space limitations, things that you would probably find very prevalent in formal learning environments. So self-directed is a great way to learn if you want to do classes online, if you want to take a quick, either free or very cheap Microsoft Office course. Things that are going to build that resume and build you up as a potential employee or current employee. One of my favorites and often overlooked type of learning is social. So employees learn as much about their job from their colleagues and managers as from any formal training or courses, interacting with coworkers outside of direct work situations. This can be any social aspect of your employment. This can be learning socially from friends, from grandparents, from aunties and uncles, from neighbors. These are skills that someone else may have that you find would be really beneficial for your current employer to build skills, or just for your personal life. So if you have a neighbor who, let's say, does pottery in their garage, maybe talk to them. If that sounds like something that'd be a great hobby for you and you don't know how to do it, maybe they're willing to teach you. Maybe they're willing to help you out. Or maybe you want to learn something more in your professional field and you see someone who you feel maybe getting more pay, has 5-10 years on you and slightly different job duties, and you would love to have that job. Well, find out what they're doing, find out what they know, learn from them, talk to them, ask questions, things like that. This would be a social type of learning. And lastly, there's hybrid learning. And this is blended learning. It's also known as blended learning. And it usually combines your digital media with your classic educator-led formats. And this can create a plan that suits the needs of many different types of students. A great example of this would be, let's say you're an apprentice and you're attending a trades program. You're getting that hands-on experience as an apprentice, but you're also getting that book-oriented and testing portion done as well. So there's a lot of different types of learning, and they're all really beneficial in the long run, mostly because it's going to develop you personally as well as professionally. One of the main things about continuous learning is learning something every day, whether that's expanding on knowledge you already know or learning something completely new. These are things we want to do every day. As kids, we're usually encouraged to learn something new. I mean, we're at school, we did experiments at our schools, we did extracurricular activities, we joined clubs, we were parts of groups, but then something happens, of course, and we turn into adults. And we went from being these curious kids to children who are really dedicated to a very unchanging routine, either a 9 to 5 or you're working your job, you're taking care of your children. And this unchanging routine can in fact limit our brain's ability to learn new things. And that's worrisome because learning new things is important to our happiness. In fact, the brain needs us to learn. It's a muscle, and just like any muscle in our body, we need to exercise it. There's numerous apps, there's videos, there's games online that can train your brain, but there are also very basic everyday skills that can boost your learning. And it doesn't always have to be technical learning, like reading a Microsoft Office book. I mean, if you want to do that, you can. Personally, that would not be something that I would want to do in my spare time. But instead, read something that you like, and you build your vocabulary doing this. So number one is read. That can be books, magazines, newspapers, comic books, whatever you enjoy. This in turn can expand your vocabulary. It can build your knowledge of a subject. It can even make you more confident with something you may already know. It helps you cultivate curiosity, expand your imagination, and develop more compassion for those who are different from you, making this a great habit of continuous learning. And again, vocabulary is part of this, okay? The more you read, the better vocabulary is going to get. Putting something into practice. Skills-based continuous learning is useless if it isn't applied. Reading a book on a coding language isn't the same as writing a program. Studying painting isn't the same as picking up a brush. If your knowledge can be applied, put it to practice. And these can be hobbies. I mean, hobbies are a great way to learn. Teaching others. You learn what you teach. If you have an outlet of communicating ideas to others, you're more likely to solidify that learning. So start a blog, mentor someone, even discuss ideas with friends. These are great ways to teach others and in turn also teach yourself. It's keeping that stuff in your brain. Get more intellectual friends. Okay, now I'm going to make this very specific. Intellectual friends doesn't mean that they have to be somebody who has a PhD and, is a professor and is this amazing, crazy, educated person. No, this can be your friend who lives down the street who has a hobby that you don't have. Have them teach you that hobby. Expand your personal learning capabilities, okay? Spending more time with people who think. Spend time with people who aren't just considered, your stereotypical smart, but people who invest much of their time in learning a new skill and knowledge and thinking critically about the world around them. These habits will rub off on you and push you more towards continuous learning. Even better, they'll probably share some of their knowledge with you. This is a really great way of learning new things. Health-wise, learning something new every day can also keep your brain sharp as you age. Practicing, learning, improving your concentration, your memory, your problem solving, and can also reduce the chance of developing dementia. So health-wise, continuous learning is a great thing. It's gonna help you not get the things you don't want to get in older age. And it can also build some skills that you may have either personally or professionally. And the bottom line is continuous learning doesn't have to be complex or complicated, okay? Setting even a small goal to learn something new every week, every other week, whatever it may be, every month, can help build more knowledge and become a more well-rounded person. Learn more and watch how much your life becomes more interesting. You'll have more things to talk about with people. You'll be able to express yourself better. You'll have more knowledge in numerous areas. Again, becoming a more well-rounded, more knowledgeable person, whether that's personally or professionally. It's a great thing. There are numerous benefits, okay? Numerous benefits to being a continuous learner. One of those would be remaining relevant. This would be employment-wise, okay? You don't want to be left behind. You want to ensure you remain relevant in your industry by keeping up to date with trends and adapting your skill set, right? To function effectively amongst this rapidly changing world of technology, you need to learn new things to remain valuable. You don't want to be the person in the shadow that is not learning new things while everyone is passing you by. Okay? Professionally, you need to expand on the skills you have, either, as I said earlier, learning socially, learning formally, whatever it is that is most comfortable for you, to expand those skills so you can better your resume, can better your professional digital footprint, any of those things. You also have to prepare for the unexpected. Life has its ups and downs, right? Lifelong learning will help you adapt to those changes. So one great example would be losing your job and having to depend on those new skills to find work. So if you were one of those people who chose not to learn new things while you were employed for a few years at some specific job, it's going to be a lot harder for you to find a new job because you won't have all those additional skills that all those other people who are doing the same job as you, who were doing the continuous learning, can step on. Those are extra stepping stones for them when they try to seek employment. By continuing to learn, you're more easily able to step out of your comfort zone and take on new job opportunities. So a great example would be one of our current participants. And this person had been working in their specific field for about 20 years. They didn't have a degree, but they had 20 years of experience, okay, 20 years. And then one day the company decided, we're getting rid of everyone here who doesn't already have a degree and specific skill set in using this specific, very, very specific to that type of position database thing, right? Well, this person loses their job and this person doesn't know what to do because all they have is that 20 years of experience. And every interview that they had gone through, the same response was made by every interviewer, right? They said, oh, well, you don't have a degree. Yeah, you have knowledge, but you don't have a degree, okay? I explained to her numerous times, you need to explain that you are willing to learn from those people. Whether you've had 20 years of experience, you're willing to expand on those skills. You're willing to show her or him, whoever that interviewer is, that you're willing to learn as much as you can, because those 20 years of experience, you could also probably teach those newcomers a thing or two of real life experience of working in that specific field. And what happened? She got employed, okay? This is because she chose to learn all that data entry. She did it on her own. She looked it up online. She took some little free classes that she found, right? Some Google search to figure it out. And that is how this person was able to get back into that position and is now helping to teach some of those new people who do have the degrees, because they don't have the experience that this person has, right? So again, stepping out of your comfort zone, taking on new opportunities for employment. Thirdly, it boosts your professional profile. When you're always learning, you'll keep improving and growing your career and start to receive recommendations from colleagues and managers. The chances that you'll switch jobs multiple times throughout your life, and that is very true for many of us. And you need to learn new skills to adapt accordingly. Again, we're talking about adaptation, being able to better your situation, better your skill set, so that you can boost yourself in employment and in your professional or personal life, okay? So getting those skills can help you go up the ladder, can help you do better in the long run. Competence leads to confidence. Learning new things gives us a feeling of accomplishment, which in turn boosts our confidence in our own capabilities. Also, you'll feel more ready to take on challenges and explore new opportunities. So as we know, good self-esteem, having confidence while going into an interview, you're more likely to get that job because you're confident about the fact that you can do that job. You are the best person for that job. You're confident in your skill set. Learning new things, becoming very good at those specific skills, whether that's technical or a soft skill, all of those things are going to really show in an interview and then once you're employed. It can also spark new ideas. So acquiring new skills will unveil new opportunities and help you find innovative solutions to problems. And in turn, this could earn you more money, which everyone loves. We may be working, let's say we're working a full-time position, it has the benefits, it's got pretty okay pay, it's, a little over minimum wage, we're doing okay. But it would be great to have a little extra spending money, right? Or money to save for a rainy day. And you like making, let's say, decorative coffee cups, whatever it might be, whatever it is that you like to do. And someone makes compliments, says, hey, do you ever sell those? And you go, well, maybe that might be a good idea. Maybe I could do this as a side gig. And I'm really good at social media. So use those skills. And you could have that side gig and be making more money. Learning more about what it would take to do that side gig, whatever it may be. Changing your perspective. Continuous learning opens your mind and changes your attitude by building on what you already know. The more you learn, the better you'll get at seeing more sides of the same situation, helping you to understand more deeply. This can be in your personal life, but it also can be in your professional life. Coworkers who you might not understand, learning, reading, all of these things are going to change your perspective on how you can relate to another person, how you can understand cultural differences, whatever it may be. And lastly, paying it forward. Continuous learning isn't just about you. And I'll say that again, it isn't just about you. Lifelong learning helps develop your leadership skills, which then translates into fostering lifelong learning in other individuals by encouraging them to further their education by being a continuous learner as well. So showing others, they're going to learn from seeing you benefit from the fact that you are a continuous learner. And how to develop or as a continuous learner, okay, how to develop these skills. And that's as simple as just reading a book, right? It can be from everything from reading a book to watching a movie to talking with friends. It's setting goals. Like, hey, I want that person's job. What do I need in order to get there? It may not be a degree. It may not be a certificate. It may just be, hey, this person has better computer skills, or hey, this person has better soft skills and can speak with people in a better way. We'll practice those skills. Shadow that person. Talk to them, ask questions. These are ways that we develop continuous learning. And lastly, always have a curious mind, okay? Explore different topics and don't be afraid to ask for clarity. Be inquisitive, and if your intent is sincere, all right? If you really want it, there will be people who will help and support you in that journey. Experiment, try new things, get new hobbies, keep the momentum going, keep learning, and keep reflecting. These are great ways to become a better person, a more well-rounded person, and professionally, you will do better and you will see positive changes by being a continuous learner. All right, everybody. Hopefully you learned a few things. Maybe it'll push you to want to go out there and read a new book or read a magazine or talk with your friends more. And have a wonderful evening.
Hello, welcome to Time Management Ease Stress with me, Michelle McQuinn. I'm the job developer for Scare. What I do here is I help participants with their time management, along with resumes, mock interviews, and cover letters. I also help with job search and job briefings too. Let's try to go into this. So time management. So to manage your time, you want to create a to-do list, be willing to adjust your plan, like not to stay too rigid within what you want to do. You may need to adjust your plan so that your time can be used more effectively. Revisit your goals. So go back and figure out why you're doing what you're doing and what your goals are and how close you are to getting to that goal. Observe your results or how close you're coming to your results. And then again, that's where that adjustment in your plan may need to take place. And then adjustments, the last bullet point is adjustments to improve your time management. So we create a plan, create a list of things that we want to do. But then as time goes on, we may see that we need to adjust those plans so that we can manage our time a little bit more differently. Not everyone's plan. There's no one way to do a plan. What works for me may not work for you. What's driving for you may not work for all of your friends, but all suggestions are welcome, and you should be open to suggestions from outside resources. That can be friends, family, YouTube. They have like videos on time management, especially like with single parents. Time management is a must. There was a period of time where I was a single mom of 7. And for the most part, I believe 5 out of the 7 kids were in extracururcular activities. So when we get to the end of the slide, you'll see like a parent command station, and I mean command station, and that is legitly what my bedroom looked like. It had everyone scheduled there, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So when you're working on your time management, you want to prioritize what you're going to address first. So you have in this far left corner, it's important and urgent. So those are the things that are important and urgent. So you kind of need to put that on top of your priorities or what you have going on for the day. So it could be a crisis, a deadline-driven activity, medical insurance, emergencies. Wow. Medical emergency, other true emergencies, pressing problems, or last-minute preparation. And as parents, we're always getting last-minute preparation. Next to that, in the right corner, you have important, but it's not urgent. So those are just things that you might want to focus on. So preparing and planning, it's still a priority. You still need to prepare. You still need to plan for things. So it's important, but it's really not urgent. So you can put it off, a little bit. Value clarification. So that's kind of like you sitting back and figuring out what's important to you. Empowerment, again, this is all working on yourself. Relationship building, and true creation. So it's just building those relationships, creating those, figuring out ways to create those positive childhood memories. And then non-important and not urgent. Those are things that use your own caution and try to avoid as much of it as possible because it's not important, but it could be urgent, and those are some things that you can probably delegate to somebody else. Is usually what we put in that box. So it's like meeting other people's priorities and expectations, frequent interruptions, most emails and some calls, urgency masquerading as important. So it's not important, but it's urgent, and most times you can just delegate that to someone else to do. An extra hand, like mom, can you help me out? Dad, can you help me out? Or have one of your children do it. Can you put those clothes in the dryer because I left them in the washer for XYZ amount of time. I don't want them to get start to smell. And then not urgent and not important. It's okay to delve in some of that. Because we need downtime, but just for the most part, try to avoid it. So escapist activities. So that would be like binging shows on live stream, mindless TV watching, busy work. Busy work is just like unnecessary things that you don't really need to do, but you're just doing them just to do them. Junk mail, that's like things that need to be deleted from your emails, some calls. They're not urgent, they're not important. Most of the time it's like something like sitting around gossiping or mostly what's in this category is sitting around. But it's not urgent, not important. So, when it comes to time management, you want to look at what's in that box and how much time it's actually taking, because the truth of the matter is that you can get a lot of things, you can replace a lot of things, but you can't replace time. And as you get older, you realize how important time is, and you can't buy it, you can't get it back, and wasted time isn't something small. It's important. Your time is valuable. Your energy is valuable. So just focus on, just take a minute, especially in that important and not urgent moment when you want to do that whole empowerment and your value clarification. Figure out what's important to you. What do you want to do with your time? What are some of the things that you need to focus on? How can you make your life better? And how can you make life better for you and your children? What kind of life do you want your children to have? What kind of life do you want to provide for them? So, when we're looking for extra time, usually you can find extra time in that wasted box. That's to the bottom right. So it's usually, how many hours do you spend binging, watching watching streams on Hulu and, Disney Plus, because it's like you think that, oh, I'm just going to watch, I don't know, maybe Grey's Anatomy. And then next thing you know, like you're on season 5, episode 10. So you have to watch how much you're streaming, how much time you're spending on streaming. And then what are the benefits of time management? Like I said, you can't get your time back. The time, you only have 24 hours in a day, you only have 7 days in a week, and it may not seem like a lot of time, but if you manage your time right, you can get a lot done, and that's like waking up early. I learned to do this before. I used to spend my weekends like, I'm gonna sleep in and try to sleep in, on the weekends, but then I found that my weekends went by so fast. I didn't really get anything done during the day because why? I slept through most of the day. So now, believe it or not, I set an alarm clock. Even on the weekends, I get up early. I have my coffee. My kids are asleep, so I get to have my coffee with quiet. That's like my best friend. I love coffee and quiet. And I get a lot done. I do my to-do list for the day. I go out into my garden. I deal with my little chickens, and I do my whole, house cleaning. And usually I'm done with everything by the time my kids start to wake up. But other benefits to time management, you can accomplish more with less effort by eliminating distractions. And you want to articulate what your distractions are. So it's like if you're focused on your goal, what is carrying you or pulling you away from you being able to focus on your goal? You can improve your decision-making ability. Because you have more time to think. And a lot of times, people are on autopilot and they don't have time to think because they're rushing here, rushing there, rushing to do this, rushing to do that. And, it's kind of like, the little white rabbit. So it's just like when you improve your time management, it gives you time to do things like purposefully do things with your time. It gives you more time to learn new information and skills. It reduces your stress, and you can avoid feelings of being rushed and overwhelmed. You can avoid procrastination and develop self-discipline because when you have more time to actually think and plan, you have time to create a schedule for yourself so that you don't feel that you're putting this off. It's just like you can give yourself that countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let's get it done. You can schedule free time so that you can relax and focus, and then you can handle your deadlines more efficiently because you're not doing it under pressure, you're not doing it under stress. You've allotted a certain amount of time to get this done. And then you can enhance the quality of your work. And because your work isn't rushed, and because your work isn't filled with stress, your quality of your work goes up. Tips for effective time management. So use one calendar. If possible, use one calendar. When I had all my kids and all their activities going on, I had to use several boards because that's just the way my brain works. I kind of need things in different compartments. And like I said, the way that I manage my time might not be effective for you. and then the way that you manage your time might not jive with me. So for me, I'm a very visual person, so everything has to be in compartments and color coded. And the colors help me remember. And then when I'm trying to remember what I need to do, I can kind of visualize what the board looked like before I left. And because it has colors and it's just, that whole command center, I'm able to remember things more quickly. Filter out your distractions. And when I say distractions, I don't just mean your phone, because those are common distractions. And I don't just mean like television watching. Also, distractions are people. And some people are energy suckers, so you gotta watch out for that. So just people, their problem, and just create healthy boundaries around your time. Set reminders for yourself. Most people have cell phones. You can set alarms for specific things. I have an alarm for myself just to tell my kids when to do their chores. Because it's like they need constant reminders as well. I mean, you can put that calendar up all you want to, but some children need someone to follow behind them. And then try to finish your task early. So if you can, if it's a little to do, I try to hurry up and do it and just get it out the way. So then it frees up time to do something else. And then how to organize your schedule. So keep important items in one spot. I can't tell you how much time people waste looking for things, when if you have a designated spot for it, then there's no reason to waste time looking for it. I have this habit in the morning where I take the glasses off to do my makeup, and then I lose my glasses and I can't see, and then I have to waste all this time looking for my glasses. Anyway, but if I put it in one spot, then I would know exactly where they were, right? Right. Okay. Plan ahead. Try to always be in front of the problem, or try to see it coming. If you can try to be forward-thinking, have some forethought, and just plan ahead, like just in case. Organize your workspace, like I said, and your workspace is also your desktop on your computer, because in your email, because you can waste so much time looking for a document on your desktop or looking for a document in your email. If you would just organize everything in your email, you're able to create folders. You can compartmentalize those folders into like what you need it to be, so that it's organized, so that you're not wasting time just looking for things. Segment your day. So for me, I work with different programs. So I have to segment my day, and I do it by program. So in the morning, I work on one program. In the afternoon, in midday, I work on a different program. And in the afternoon, I work on another. So segment your day and make sure you put in some time to take a break. You don't want to burn yourself out trying to get through your schedule. You do need a break. You're not a robot. You don't plug yourself in. You're not an iPhone. Take that break. Get up, walk around, walk to the front. Get those juices to flow in. Drink some coffee, get some tea. Next, make a to-do list. We talked about that. Write down your appointments immediately. And this is so that you don't double book yourself, or agree to do something in a time that you already have an appointment for. Create a routine for yourself. It takes about 30 days. No, it's 90 days. It's 90 days for a routine to become a habit. So it's 90 days for it to become a habit. So create yourself a routine, a healthy routine. of time management, and then those time management skills become a habit for you. And lastly, it's okay to say no. If you don't have time, you don't have time. Even if you need time for yourself, don't feel guilty of taking the time that you need for yourself and saying no. Like if it's your me time and that's your personal timeout time, it's okay to say no, period. Also children, like I said, I have seven children, and when they were growing up, I always had like visual schedules for them so they could anticipate what was coming up next, and then my expectations of what I wanted them to do, and then also too, it made them accountable, because I would say, well, your schedule, you see it, I see the schedule, do you see the schedule? You knew that you were supposed to, brush your teeth this morning, before you got dressed. Like, why didn't you brush your teeth? It's right there on the schedule. Also, sometimes I would laminate their schedule. I know it's not easy to have access to laminating paper. Laminating paper basically allowed them to write on the visual schedule so that they can put check marks after what they already did. But another tool to use if you don't have laminating paper or you can't get it laminated is paper protectors. You can buy those at Office Depot. And then you just kind of tape the opened end, and then you can hang it up, and again they can write on it with a dry erase marker. And another one is clear contact paper, but I don't really recommend that, just because like it's textured, and then the dry erase marker kind of gets stuck in the texture, and then it starts to look really ugly. But the cheapest route would be to get page protectors from Office Depot. I believe you can probably find them in the dollar store as well. Another time management tool is to have this right here. They're called texts. Texts are like picture communication, especially with children who are in preschool. Because they can't read, so you put pictures. But this first, then, it's a visual of do your homework first, then you can play video games. First do this, then do that, because it leaves no question. Like, can I play a video game? Well, did you do your work? Like it puts the expectations out there. So that they know, and it's a visual of first then. You can get these visuals anywhere. You can, look them up on Google, print them out, and then again with the whole laminating. All right, this is the Parent Command Center. This is what my bedroom looks like. So I had to have like something like this to help me stay on task. But with my kids, they had their visual schedule in their room so that they knew what to do. Also, too, I had visual schedules in the bathroom so that when they were getting ready, they knew like step by step what I expected to be done, while they were in the bathroom. I don't want to have to come in there and check them after you. You have a schedule right there. But I would, of course, question them if they brushed their teeth, or, did you put on your deodorant? Did you, So, it's like you have the visual schedule there, but you also kind of do like your little check-ins. This visual schedule allows everybody to see what's coming so they can anticipate what they're doing next. They can anticipate like what they're doing on the weekend. If on your command center you have a menu, they know what's for dinner, so then there is no them questioning what's for dinner. As soon as you walk in the door, like it's already on the board, so they know what's for dinner. They know like when is the next event you guys are going to, whose birthday party, what time anything is, everything is right there. So when we're talking about distractions, sometimes our kids can be like a major distraction, and they're always wanting to know what's coming up next. So if you give them a visual of what to expect and what's coming up next, then that's a lot of time. If you pay attention, that's a lot of time that you can get back of not having to answer a bunch of questions that are like right there on board. And then also too, it gives them a sense of ownership, and in that a sense of ownership and self-esteem, because like they know what's coming up next, and they kind of get a kick out of you not being on schedule. So having a schedule for the kiddos is very helpful. So I'd like to thank you for being a part of this, and I hope it was beneficial for you. And we just, as parents, we just need to make the most out of our time, and and make the most out of our day, and just the time we can't get back. So we have to basically budget our time, like we budget our pocketbook. We can get more money, but we can't get more time.